Lesson 2, but hopefully not baby steps anymore. I mean, maybe. We might be getting to some more baby steps. But I think lesson 2 is kind of where it starts picking up pace a little bit more with like grammar, all that stuff. Not too much, of course. Looks like today we'll be getting into verbs instead of nouns, so that'll be nice. We'll learn a bit about verbs. Verbs are kind of important to know, especially since they change a lot, unlike in English where they almost don't change. And lesson 2 actually opens up with a lovely reading from Landnamabok. This is from Hauksbok or Hauksbok 79 or Storlabok 92. All right, and those are just the different manuscripts that we get them from. All right. Herjover het mader, Barðarson Herjólfssonar, han fór til Grönland með Eiríki. Herjólfur nam Herjólfsfjörð og bjó að Herjólfsnesi. Eiríkur nam Eiríksfjörð og bjó í Brattahlíð. Ein Leifur sonur hans eftir hann. And that means there was a man called Herjolf, son of Bard, son of Herjolf. He went to Greenland with Eric, which we would know as Eric the Red, and Herjolf took, which is Nam, and Nam seems to be used more often for taking land, like you're claiming some kind of land, instead of their other word for to take, which is Taka, T-A-K-A, Taka. So this one is Herjolf claimed Herjolfsfjord and lived at Herjolfsnes. Eric took Eriksfjord and lived at Brattahlíð, which is Broad Slope, and Leif, his son, after him. Some of that frequent vocabulary is all long A, and in this case, it was taking its preposition in the dative, which is why you have the I at the end of Herjolfsnesi, which means, this time means on, upon, at, or in. Then we have bua, which would decline as, or conjugate as bjoa Herjolfsnesi, in that clause there. Just means lived. And we have en, which is a conjunction, means but, or when you're contrasting something, and. And we have, what else do we have? Eftir, which means after. This time after in time, which is where we see eftir hann, after him. Fara, which conjugates as fór til Grönland, traveled to Greenland, and fór seems to be used for long distances, like transcontinental distances, international distances, while ganga is usually for like a walking distance, a short distance, a local distance, like walking from one room to the next in a house would use ganga, but from one country to another would be fara. Of course, you'd conjugate appropriately. Then we have hon, which means he, heita, which is where we get het from when we conjugate that, I, which means in, within, or at, and that's where we see it in bjó í Brattahlíð, lived in Brattahlíð. What else do we see? Mother means man, með, with, ok, okay, and sonur, son, and til, two. And til always takes its object in the genitive. So when we see it in han fór til Grönland, Greenland will always be in the genitive. Okay, then they give us a nice little exercise here. Match the Old Norse on the left with the correct English translation on the right. Okay, Herjolfur het mader. Well, we know Herjolf is the name, so it needs to probably start with a name. And then mader has man in it, so it needs to include something about a man. And het, heita means to be called, so we could say Herjolf was a man called, is what that translates to literally. Obviously, we would say a man was called Herjolf, which would be the right translation of that. Then we have Barðarson Herjólfssonar, Sonar, which would be Bard's son of Herjolf. Yep. And then Han far till Grönland med Eriki. That would be Han, which we learned was he. Far, traveled. Till is to, and then Grönland, Groenlands, Grönland, literally Greenland, is just a name. And then med, with, Eriki, which is another name, Eric. He traveled to Greenland with Eric. Or he went to Greenland with Eric. Both work. Herjolfur nam Herjolfsfjord. Herjolf, and then we have our verb, and then we have Herjolfsfjord. Herjolfsfjord. And this time we would say took or claimed, both work. We have och bjå ad Herjolfsnesi, and lived on or at Herjolfsnäs. That's what that would be. Eriker nam Eriksfjord och bjå I Brattahlíð. Eric took Eriksfjord and lived in Broadslope. En lever sonur hans eftir ham. And, or but, if you want to be more literal, his son Leif after him. Grammar 2 box. Definite article. The definite article is the word the. As noted below, the Old Norse definite article declines for case, number, and gender, which you will see in a second. There is no indefinite article, which would be a or an. We mentioned this previously. So like they can't say an apple or a car. They have to say the apple, the car. In Old Norse, although sometimes the numeral ein or its variations is used for emphasis, like usually in the sense of like he alone or that specific thing, like for emphasis. Let's say they wanted to say an apple, but this apple is important, so like an apple, you know, like they've never seen this kind of apple before, like a golden apple, like an apple. That's what they do. That's what they use ein for. Okay. When translating in English, the indefinite article usually has to be added, which would be a or an, usually has to be added. Han var frände Herjolf. He was a kinsman of Herjolf. Han var en nyliger maður. He was a promising man. Hon var dóttir Þorgerðar. She was a daughter of Thorgerd. All right, then we have the photo of the definite articles being declined. This is what we call a paradigm chart. You actually already saw a couple paradigm charts for those nouns in Baby Steps Part 2 and 3, I believe. Okay, the definite article is, well, okay, sorry, let me start. When the definite article is used with an adjective, as in hörte fugl, the first bird, hörte korn, the first grain, and Eriker in rauði, Eric the red, the article precedes the adjective. When used without an adjective, the definite article is added as a suffix to the noun after its case ending, not before, after it. For example, the nouns mother, bók, lond become motherin, the man, bókin, the book, londid, the land. When the case ending of a noun ends in a vowel, the initial I of the article is dropped. For example, kona plus the feminine article in becomes konan. So also, frände becomes frändin, or when the definite article stands alone, it's sometimes spelled with initial H. This is, the initial H thing is, I would say it becomes more common the younger the manuscripts are. Of course, they're not super young, 1200s, 1300s, that kind of thing. I'd say the younger the manuscript, the more often you're going to see an H at the front of it. While the older it is, you're going to see an E instead of an I, but they still conjugate the same, or decline the same way. All right, proper nouns. Below are masculine and feminine names encountered in the readings of the first lessons. With few exceptions, proper nouns, that is, names of persons, etc., decline like regular nouns. For instance, eriker, herjover, take the same set of endings as the masculine nouns konungur and wikinger. Each proper noun, like all nouns, is either strong or weak. Masculine weak nouns / names, such as bjarni or hjalti, which bjarni is bear and hjalti means hilt, the hilt of a sword. These ones take simpler endings. So, over here in this photo, we have eriker, erik, eriki, eriks, and that's going to be basically the same thing. Notice how Thorstein has, instead of an R, an N. I think we do go on later to understand why it's not Thorsteinar, and I believe I already discussed this too, but I'm going to say it anyway. Thorstein, Thorstein, Thorsteini, and Thorsteins. And then we have Bard, which is one of those few people or few nouns that has AR instead of S for the genitive. Then our weak nouns are super easy. They're always the easiest ones to remember any sort of declining for. We have Bjarni and Hjalti, that's nominative singular, and then everything else ends in an A. Bjarna for accusative, dative, and genitive, Hjalta for accusative, dative, and genitive. Super duper easy. So accusative would be like, I gave, or not, I shouldn't start with I gave. I should say, I took land from Bjarni, except now it'd be Bjarna. I gave to Bjarna land, and this is Bjarna land. That's just an example of how those work. They're always the same. Nouns have nouns have their peculiarities. For example, the name Thorstein ends with an N rather than the more usual nominative and masculine ending R. Rather than being absent, the nominative R has changed to N in order to match the preceding N. This change, called assimilation, is a very common and regular process in Old Norse that likely occurred because it was easier to pronounce the sound of double N rather than an R. Other masculine names, such as Bjorn and Bjarni, decline with different sets of endings. These, too, are explained in later lessons. The first reading passage of this lesson contains only one feminine name, Thorgerðr. Thorgerðr is an example of a common type of feminine noun, which, like many masculine nouns, ends in R in the nominative singular. Feminine names ending in R follow the pattern of Thorgerðr. Note that names like Freydís and Olof decline somewhat differently. Feminine weak nouns, names such as Gyða or Helga, take a simpler set of endings than their strong counterparts. So, we have Sigríður, and then we have Sigríði, Sigríði, and Sigríðar. And then Ólöf, we have Ólöf, Ólöfu, Ólöfu, and Ólafar. And then our weak feminine nouns are always going to start with that A, Gyða, Helga, and then the rest are going to be U. Just like weak masculine nouns are always going to start with that I, or not start, but end with that I, or end with an A if it's weak feminine. Grammar toolbox. Verbs. Verbs are the core of a language. If you don't have verbs, nobody knows what you're doing, you know? I could say, he blank a ball. Without the verb, you have no idea what I'm doing, though. Did I kick the ball? Did I slap it? Did I eat the ball? I have no idea. I mean, you have no idea, and I have no idea now, because nobody's telling us anything. Verbs make up the absolute core of a language. Now, obviously, you can't have a sentence without nouns and various other components, but the verb is definitely the core of language. They express, such as being able to express action, existence, happenings, feelings, and thoughts. Verb usage in Old Norse corresponds closely to modern English, not exactly, because of the close relationship between them. Now, Old Norse and Old English, yes, they're both Germanic. However, Old English is West Germanic and Old Norse is North Germanic. Now, because they're old, the similarities are more apparent. And when I start doing Old English lessons, you might be able to recognize some similarities, but not too many. All right, agreement. A verb agrees with the subject of the sentence in person, first, second, third, just like English does, and number, singular or plural. Person and number are indicated by endings called personal endings. Tense. Old Norse has two verb tenses, present and past. Reference to future events is expressed in several ways. Use of the present tense, auxiliary verbs such as mune, shall, will, hence, ek mun fara, I will go, and skulu, skulu, and the other one is munu. Very easy to spell, very easy to remember. Skulu is kind of like shall, for the most part. And use of time expressions such as morgen, tomorrow. Literally upon the morning or on the morning. On the morning of tomorrow is kind of how you could think of that. Mood. Verbs have three moods: indicative, subjunctive, and imperative. We also have those. Mood reflects a speaker's attitude toward the reality/truth of a statement. The indicative is by far the most common, and really it's most common for us too, you know. The indicative is used when an utterance is believed to be true. It's our state. It's our stating mood. You know, it's like it is a fact, or it must be a fact, is what it is. Such as Ulfur var maður svo mikil og sterkur, at eigi varu hans jafningar. Ulf was a man so big and strong that none were his equals. From Egil Saga. The subjunctive expresses doubt, uncertainty, or something hypothetical. In Old Norse, it's mostly used in dependent clauses, especially in indirect speech. Fadir hans hefur fått meld at han myndi av hende lata buid en herstein teki with. His father has said that he would transfer, or let go from his hand, give up, the farm, where Herstein to take it over. And this is the this is the only portion from Hunsathori saga that I have. So I don't know what happens in that saga. I haven't read any yet, except for that sentence. The imperative is used in commands. Hugdu, you must strike, from Islendinga saga. Verb classifications. In general, there are three types of verbs: action verbs, linking verbs, and auxiliary verbs. Action verbs can be either transitive or intransitive, and all that means is that transitive will have objects, while intransitive verbs do not. Like, you can't say, you died men, right? That sounds silly to us. You can't say you died men. You'd say you killed men. That's what you'd say. Something like that. Transitive, they take objects. Transitive verb expresses action on something or possession. For example, gova and eiga. Such verbs always have a direct object, a noun or pronoun that receives the action of the verb. For example, Haraldur konungur gav henni land. King Harold gave her land. And hon har svärd. She has or possesses a sword. Here, cases become more important. Direct objects in Old Norse generally use the accusative, while indirect take the dative. Intransitive verbs do not take objects, either direct or indirect. For example, hon do, she died, is a complete action. Hon do men, she died men, is ungrammatical because döja, to die, cannot take a direct object. The same for hlæja, hon hlær, she laughs, is grammatical. But hon hlær barn, she laughed a child, is definitely not. That doesn't make any sense. Some verbs, though, and this kind of breaks the rules a little bit, some of them can be both transitive and intransitive. And these ones usually are pretty easy to understand. and they're not like super crazy, and they make sense, you know, such as the verb eta, 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 to eat, can function as intransitive in han åt, he ate, or han åt kött, he ate meat. Both those work. It's important to understand voice for learning the verbs of most languages. Voice refers to the distinction between active and passive. The passive voice occurs when the subject of a sentence is the object of the action. For example, the man kicked the dog. I don't know why the author used that specific example, but there you go. The man kicked the dog. That's in the active, but the dog was kicked by the man is passive. Well, Norse verbs have 3 types of voice: active, middle reflexive, and passive. The active and middle have their own sets of endings, which the passive is formed. The active and middle have their own sets of endings, while the passive is formed using an auxiliary verb and past participle, a verb form which indicates certain tenses and functions as an adjective. Basically, a verb that acts like an adjective. That's what that is. The active voice is the subject performing the action. He kicks, he kicked. Passive, the subject undergoes the action, so it happens to them. He is kicked, he was kicked. Now, verbs with middle endings, that's our middle reflexive, means that the action was reflected back on the subject. It would be like, he kicked himself. That would be in the middle voice. Now, thankfully, all you have to do in Old Norse would just say, hon, and then whatever kick is. Actually, I don't know what kick is. He has some examples up here, though. For example, he kicked himself, okay. Hence, the subject both performs and undergoes the action. The middle occasionally has passive meanings. Skip buask, the ships are being made ready. Literally, the ships prepare themselves. Or, londid ödisk, the country would be laid waste. Literally, the country wasted itself. Or like emptied itself. It's so funny. The middle voice has, I guess you could say, lots of idioms. That's kind of where all their idioms come from, be the middle voice. Just because, well, at least for us anyway, it kind of sounds, it seems like an idiom when you say the country emptied itself. Kind of seems like an idiom. But I think it's very interesting. Alright. Past tense, strong, weak, and preterite present. Verbs in Old Norse build their past tense in specific ways that can be divided to the categories of strong or weak. A small third type of verb called preterite present verbs shows features of both strong and weak verbs. Strong verbs distinguish their present and past by changing their root vowel, such as heita, but then in the past it becomes het. A, E-I to e, long E. The same system existed in Old English, and elements have survived in modern English. The present tense of the verb take is takes, and it forms its past tense as took by changing its root vowel. Weak verbs, however, will form their past with a dental suffix, d, t, or eth. For example, the past tense of kala is kalave, which adds the eth, much like English has called, where we add ed. That would be a weak verb. English also employs dental suffixes, such as ed, but also t as well, such as in dream, and then it becomes dreamt. I have bad English sometimes. Usually I just say dreamed. He dreamed a dream. I don't usually use dreamt. It might just be a kind of an obsolete form of the verb now. Let me know actually if you guys say dreamt, or if you just say dreamed. Because I've always said dreamed instead of dreamt. My parents say dreamt, but I've always said dreamed. I don't know, I just didn't make the connection in my head. But yeah, let me know if you guys do that. It's weird. Okay. Present present verbs show features of both strong and weak verbs. There are only 10, which is such a blessing. There's only 10 of them. 10 weird verbs. That's nice. 10 of them. Of these verbs in Old Norse. Despite being few in number, they are frequent because they're often employed as modal auxiliaries. They're just fancy. That's fancy for they help. They're helping verbs. They help the verbs with a sense of obligation, intention, need, or probability. Modals are also frequent in English and are employed in a manner similar to Old Norse. For example, I sail to Iceland can be modified by adding auxiliary to express obligation. I ought to sail to Iceland. Ek skal sigla til Íslands. Or, I have to sail to Iceland. Ek att sigla till Íslands. Infinitives and participles. Old Norse makes frequent use of infinitives and participles. Infinitives are fixed, unchanging verb forms, and they always end in a. So, heita, kalla, verða, vera, all those are infinitives. For example, taka, T-A-K-A, means to take, and kalla means to call, are infinitives. Infinitives don't take endings in order to indicate person, number, or tense, whereas English employs the word to denote infinitive. To call, to take, to hear. That's how we make our infinitive. Old Norse, on occasion, employs at, but usually not. Instead, the infinitive in Old Norse is the core verb form itself. Dictionaries of Old Norse, like those of English, refer to verbs by their infinitives, much like how in dictionaries in Old Norse we would refer to the noun as its nominative singular. Verbs, we just refer to it as its infinitive. So we have bjarni in a dictionary, or we have taka in a dictionary. You can have the declined and conjugated forms of those, but the base form would be the nominative singular or the infinitive of that verb. Okay. Participles are adjectives derived from verbs. So something like walking. For example, takande, taking, is a present participle. It's an adjective with Old Norse suffix ande, which is like our ing. Working in medicine, sweet, okay. And taking, taken, is a past participle, much like our taken with an en. And you can see that they would be spelled similar, like this, T-E-K-I-N-N, and taken, T-A-K-E-N, very similar. Present participles are rare in Old Norse, used mostly in special constructions such as the following. What er thought til ras takanda? What should now be adopted as the course of action from Gisla Soga? Past participles are common, however, such as var það gerður til konungstekin og varð maður ágætur. Then Gerard was proclaimed, taken as, king and became a famous man. And I do agree. I don't even remember the last time I saw a present participle when reading stuff. I don't even remember the last time. I remember plenty of times seeing past participles. They're super frequent. But present participles, I don't even know. I'd have to go through all my translations again and see if I can maybe find one, because I don't remember one. All right. To sum up everything that I just talked about verbs. Verbs are either strong or weak. They take person, first, second, third. Their number is either singular or plural. Their tense can be present, past, or future with auxiliary verbs, just, helping verbs. Their mood can be indicative, subjunctive, or imperative. And their voice can be active, middle, which is a new one. Remember, middle is just himself, herself, itself, themselves. Like he kicked himself, she pushed herself, it killed itself, they something themselves. I can't think of any other verbs. All right, those are voice. And then we have, after all of that, we're going to do our last little point here on infinitives. And then I will see you again in part 2. First, let's do these infinitives. Almost all Old Norse verbs have the infinitive by adding a. I don't know a single verb that doesn't have an a in its infinitive. I don't know why he said almost all, because I haven't seen a single one that doesn't have that. I don't know where he got that from, but maybe he knows more. Obviously, he knows more than me, so maybe he's seen like one verb that's just kind of irregular. Actually, maybe I have two. Might be a preterite. Oh, that's right. It might be. Usually preterite presents. I think they ended something else. All right. Basic verb minus any endings. For example, att geva, to give, and att fara, to go, or like to travel. Remember, this is like long distance kind of thing. The infinitive is commonly used with auxiliary verbs, as for example in English, I want to give. When the infinitive is used in this way, it's called a complementary infinitive. Ik wil neema land, I want to take land. Ik wil fara, I want to go. Han vill bo i Drepstocki. She wants to live at Drepstock. Ingolf will give Herjolf land. Ingolf wants to give land to Herjolf. The following list gives the infinitives and their past tense of verbs in this lesson. In order to help distinguish infinitives in Old Norse, such words will be frequently preceded by the participle at, which corresponds to English to. Now keep in mind, this doesn't usually happen in Old Norse, as you could tell from those readings. I don't think at was used once. Yeah. And I haven't really seen that either. I think I've seen it before, but it's definitely not a common thing. All right, so we have bua, to live, fara, to go, more like to travel, sha, see, geva, give, heita, to be named, nema, to take, wera, to be, which wera used to be wesha, werda, to become, and then in the past tense, those would be bio, for, sa, gov, het, nom, war, ward, lived, went, saw, gave, was named, took, was, became. That is actually all of the first part. I'll see you guys again with linking verbs and a little bit more after that. I think just 4 more things to cover. And we're on to exercises already for lesson 2. And I'll probably do culture stuff after I do all the grammar and language. But I'm the Medieval Daring, and I will see you guys next time.